right, well, we are looking at Constantine and Helena tonight. Constantine, you might know of him as Constantine the First, Constantine the Great. He is the he is the Roman emperor in the 4th century. He's going to ascend the throne in about 306 AD, and he's going to rule for about, I think, 25, maybe 30 years. But we need to back up and we need to look at some history of the Roman Empire before we get to Constantine. We need to kind of set the stage to see why it was so significant. Constantine is credited with legalizing Christianity and making it the religion for the Roman Empire in the 4th century. So what came before Constantine and what was the situation he found himself in when he ascended the throne? So we're going to back up just a little bit. So this is the Roman Empire at the time that Jesus was on earth. And everything inside the dotted line represents the Roman Empire. We're close to the height of the Roman Empire. And throughout Scripture, we see this tension between the Romans and the Jews, throughout Scripture, right? And we know that that was a very real thing during Jesus' life on earth. So this is during Jesus' time. This is the next century, the Apostolic Age, and into the 3rd century. And you'll notice the lines are the same as what we saw during the time of Jesus, but now they've added Britannia, which is what we know of as the UK today. This is the height of the Roman Empire territorially. And during this time, this is during Paul's missionary journeys, those probably first 100 years after Jesus has died and risen and ascended. Also significant during this time is the stoning of Stephen. And I want to read, just keep this scripture in mind. We're going to come back to it a couple more times over the course of this lesson. It starts in Acts 1. And Acts 1 says this. It identifies Saul as the one who approved the execution of Stephen. So it says, Saul approved of his execution, and there arose on that day a great persecution against the church in Jerusalem, and they were all scattered throughout the regions of Judea and Samaria, except the apostles. So we know that Stephen's martyrdom, Stephen's death, ushers in a time of great persecution. And we know that during that time, the gospel is going to spread far beyond Jerusalem. Now we're moving into Samaria and to the ends of the earth, right? Remember that, because we're going to come back and talk about how the church is going to thrive even amidst persecution. That will be a theme during the Roman Empire. So then we find ourselves in what was called the crisis of the 3rd century. About 270 AD, CE they list here, we start to have breakaway empires. What's happened is you've got people in charge in different parts of the Roman Empire. It's grown to such an extent that it's hard to have a centralized government and one ruler in Rome. And so things begin to crumble, decline begins to happen. It's usually credited to bad economic choices and bad leadership. But again, from Rome, it's hard to rule all of that. So this is moving us into the 300s. Then comes a guy named Diocletian. He's the emperor immediately before Constantine. And Diocletian is known for instituting what we know of as the tetrarchy, or the rule of 4. So he takes the Roman Empire and he divides it into 4 mini empires, or 4 sections, if you will. And each one is represented by a color: purple, pink, green, and yellow. And he has what he calls Caesars and Augusti, which are, Diocletian, he is the emperor. He's in Rome. But then he's got his lower generals, if you will, that are ruling in each of these areas. He does this to try to shore up a crumbling and declining Roman Empire. And he is mostly successful. He is able to bring some order back to the Roman Empire. But 2 things that are significant about Diocletian's rule. The first is the tetrarchy relies on loyalty to Diocletian, the emperor. And the hard part is he's got people working in each of these areas that also would like to be emperor. Power is addictive. Power is something people crave. And so we have a lot of civil wars, and it's not as unified as it started out to be because of people vying for power. The other thing that Diocletian does is he is going to bring about the great persecution of Christians beginning in about 303 AD. He's encouraged by his co-emperor Galerius, and it is the last and the most severe persecution of Christians, again, before Constantine is going to come. Diocletian viewed Christianity as a major threat to the Roman Empire. Now, we've had persecutions up till this point. Nero was known for his persecution of Christians. Several of the apostles were martyred under Roman rule. John was exiled to Patmos under the Emperor Domitian. So this isn't the first time that Christians have been persecuted, but it was far worse than persecution had been up to this point. So this is called...
Not Jews, just Christians.
This is just Christians. So they are concerned about those who are following Jesus. He viewed Christianity as a threat because Christians refused to bow down to him as emperor and to the Roman gods. And so he wanted to eliminate them. Under his imperial edicts, churches were destroyed, scriptures were burned, and Christians' land and property was taken away from them, as well as imprisonment and other forms of, I'm not sure I'd go so far as to say torture, but it was not a good time for Christians to live. The persecution ultimately failed. It did not bring about the desired result. It did not kill Christianity. It did not make Christians just cave and bow down to those Roman gods and to the Roman emperor. Why? Because God prevails even through persecution. Acts 8 is a good reminder. Even through persecution, the church prevails. So, this is an artistic rendering of the Great Persecution, and believe it or not, this was the least gory piece of artwork that I can find, and you do see that that poor gentleman doesn't have a head. So that is just kind of reminiscent of what they went through. So when Diocletian came to power, the Roman Empire was in deep crisis. They were divided. He brought about the Tetrarchy to try to restore stability. It was only moderately successful and only for a short time. And following that, we get Constantine. So he ascends the throne in 306 AD. Now, Constantine has a little bit of an interesting and complicated family background. We're going to hear more about his family background when we start talking about his mother, Helena. But because of Diocletian's work, he did inherit a slightly more stable Roman Empire than Diocletian had. But Constantine wanted to be the only emperor. He did not want to be one of four. He didn't want to be one of just the Tetrarchy. Let's go back to our Tetrarchy. The pink is Illyria. Constantine was born in Illyria. So he is part of one of the eastern lands or areas under the Roman Empire. Remember, Rome is the center of the Roman Empire. He's going to be born in Illyria, in the country that we would call Serbia today. And this is showing where all of the Roman emperors were born. That orange, the small orange above the big orange, that's Siberia or Illyria, where he was born. Okay, so he's going to come in 306 AD. He has become the emperor of the West. Galerius is still an emperor of the West. Remember, Galerius was in cahoots with Diocletian. There's another guy named Licinius. So we've got several little emperors, and of course all of them would like to be the emperor. Constantine is going to win, but it's going to take him 20 years, 18 years to do it. So it's not a quick process. There's a very significant battle in 312 AD. So, of course, Constantine is in, there are civil wars everywhere. Constantine was a great military leader. If you want to be the emperor, you've got to conquer the lands around you. So civil war after civil war after civil war has been going on during these whole years and continuing into Constantine's reign. So we have many battles. There's a significant battle called the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, which took place in 312 AD. So he's been an emperor for about 6 years. But there's something very different about this battle. Before he goes into battle, This is Eusebius, the historian, recounting this. Constantine saw with his own eyes the trophy of a cross of light in the heavens above the sun and bearing the inscription, "Conquer by this." At this sight, he himself was struck with amazement, and his whole army also. So Constantine has a vision right before he enters into this battle at the Milvian Bridge. And this is what he saw. That is the symbol Chi Rho. Chi Rho are the Greek letters and the first two letters of Christ's name in Greek, Christus. And what he saw was the Chi Rho. And he put that on his own shield when he went into battle, believing that if he took this sign with him into battle, he would be victorious because he had seen God in a vision. He was victorious, and so he became a Christian. Hold on to that thought, because we're going to come back to this. Constantine is a Christian, but we're going to have some discussion about what that meant for him and what that might have looked like.
I've heard that all the soldiers painted crosses on their shield.
And he so believed that this was the reason they were successful, that he had all of his soldiers paint Chi Rhos on their shield, and they always went into battle with the Chi Rho, or the symbol for Christ, going before them, and they believed that that would make them successful. Yes, thank you, Steve. Great. No, that's great. Okay. About a year later, so they win the Edict of Milan. He is now a Christian because he has had a vision and he has experienced God in some capacity. In 313 CE, he is going to issue the Edict of Milan. This is not the edict that says everyone's going to become a Christian, but it's a first step in a very important series of steps that are going to lead to Christianity being the dominant religion of the Roman Empire. In the Edict of Milan, which is about 313 AD, any religion is tolerated. So people are granted permission and freedom to worship whatever deity they pleased, so religious tolerance. It assured Christians of their legal rights. Think about where Christians have been up to this point. They've been jailed. They've been persecuted. They've lost their homes. They've lost their land. They receive their legal rights back. This is big. He also directed the prompt return of all confiscated property to Christians throughout the Roman Empire. This is huge. And this is a game changer for everybody who was a Christian and a Christ follower during that time. All of a sudden, they have an emperor that realizes their situation, their state in life, what's been happening to Christians, and he is trying to address it, and he's trying to make life better for Christians. So when Constantine took power, Christianity was everywhere and nowhere in particular, right? What do I mean by that? There aren't churches. There are a couple of churches, but churches aren't a big thing. The church is underground. It's meeting in secret. Christians are persecuted, so you can't afford to show up at church at 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning and have somebody see you walk into a Christian church. So at this time, the church is underground, it's hidden, it's secret. But the words I would use to characterize the church during this period is simple, hidden, and resilient. They are going to thrive. The church in general is going to thrive even in the midst of persecution. So think about the Roman religious system at this point. What do they believe in? A little bit, right? They have a pantheon of gods, right? Roman gods. We think of Greek gods, now we have Roman gods. They believe in a little bit of everything. There's nothing unifying about Roman gods. More than that, Roman gods don't always meet your needs. They don't always answer your prayers. They don't always do what they're supposed to do. We would say, of course not, because they're idols. They're not real gods. When you pair giving freedoms and property and legal rights back to Christians, you see the strength of the Christian church in the midst of persecution, and you begin to feel pretty dissatisfied with your pantheon of Roman gods. Christianity is going to provide exactly what the empire needs during this time under Constantine. One God, one moral law, one absolute truth. And he is going to adopt Christianity, and he is going to work for many years to make Christianity not just legalized, but flourish in the Roman Empire. So it's not overstated, I don't think, to say that Constantine, a big part of Constantine's success was rallying the Christians behind him and giving them freedom and property and legal rights. Okay, Christianity has suddenly gone from being hidden and silent to being preferred. Thousands of people are going to flood to the church after this Edict of Milan. Tens of thousands of people are going to flood the church. Could there be a problem with that? If you go from being hidden, silent, underground, to all of a sudden, it's legal, it's okay, and tens of thousands of Romans all of a sudden decide they're going to be Christians too, because the emperor has said it's okay. So they have a crisis of what I would call evangelism with no discipleship. You have these just hordes, scads of people that are coming to Christianity. I mean, think about being a pastor. You're going to be more than overwhelmed in that situation. How do you disciple them? How do you teach them the Bible? How do you teach them the way of Jesus? So you have, maybe you would call them seekers in the 4th century, people that are attracted to Jesus and attracted to this because the emperor has said it's okay. But they haven't really fully bought in or become true followers. It's going to be a crisis in the church. This is when we see the monastic period begin. Dr. Bowler is going to talk about the monastic period next week, but it's going to start right now because believers, Christ followers, are disgusted at what they call the apostasy and the people that are not true Christ followers that are flooding the church. It's a desecration of the church for many. So they're going to withdraw and they're going to worship God in their own privacy and on their own. So it's an interesting time in the life of the church. It is going to grow exponentially. Part of the reason why it grows, not just because Constantine has legalized it or has said it's okay, but also because women start flocking to Christianity. Why? Because Jesus offers justice and righteousness. He lifts women, he elevates women, and he says, you're important. You're not a nothing. And they lived in a society where women didn't have rights. So women are very attracted to the Christian faith, and so are the poor. Because the poor are not ignored and brushed aside. Christians will take care of the poor. So you can see why people are flooding the Christian church after this Edict of Milan. Have you ever had that question, like if you could go back in time to this one particular time, I mean, I've got a list of times that I would want to go back in time, but I'm adding this one to my list because I just think, how do you manage a crisis of all of these people saying, I want to be a Christian? That feels like, I see the problems with it, but it also feels like that would be a pretty good problem to have if you can navigate it well and disciple all of these people. All right, so there's a question.
Thinking about when you mentioned before, and we asked about the Roman religion, there's nothing in their religious system to help the poor off.
Nothing at all.
Nothing at all.
Nope, Romans gave no aid to the poor. So
thing that set
the Christians apart. Yep, exactly. The other thing that set Christians apart is there were pandemics. There were lots of illnesses during this time. And the Christians were the ones that would go and not ignore the people who were sick. Other people would be too afraid to go. So helping the poor and also helping the sick really set Christians apart for centuries and also during this time. So the question could be asked, is Constantine truly a disciple of Christ, or was it politically advantageous for him to become a Christian? Because the Christian church is growing, and if he can get all of these Christians, now it's not just that small band of the hidden church, but now you've got imperial rulers of the Roman Empire who are becoming Christians. So you've got leaders, you've got local leaders, you've got larger leaders, you've got Roman populace that are becoming Christian. And he is going to rally the Christians behind him as he builds his empire. So was it politically advantageous, or was he a true disciple? And scholars are split on this. I read several that said, it was just politically advantageous, and others that said, no, that vision was really life-changing for him, and we believe he was a true disciple.
Did his mother
There is, again, scholars are divided on whether Constantine led Helena to faith or Helena led Constantine to faith. They lived in separate cities. He was raised by his father, so I think he certainly had some kind of a relationship with his mother, but she was in Rome and he was in Illyria. So it's not until much later, about 324, and we'll get to that, when they're actually reunited, and then she takes her pilgrimage. So my answer is, can it be both? I don't know. But I think I see enough evidence that there is some true devotion in Constantine, and it was already really smart of him to get these Christians on board with him. So again, he can rally the Christians behind him. He supported the church financially. That's also going to help secure his power base, if you will, right? He convened important councils. We're going to look at that in just a minute. And again, we know that Constantine's mother, Helena, was a very devout Christian. And she had a spiritual pilgrimage of her own, which we're going to get to in just a little bit. So Constantine's conversion fundamentally altered the course of both the Roman Empire and Christianity, transforming it from a persecuted minority into a favored institution, and that's a deliberately chosen word, into a favored institution that would shape the future of the Western world. Constantine is a significant figure for Christianity. All right, so let's take just a quick minute to compare Diocletian on the left, he's the guy with the little scarf, and Constantine on the right. So Diocletian is going to rebuild a crumbling empire through discipline, structure, and fear. Emphasis on fear. He is a maybe favored leader, but he's not a popular leader because of the persecution. Constantine, on the other hand, is going to reshape a restored empire through faith, unity, and vision. I know which leader I would rather follow. All right? But they represent two sides of the Roman Empire's transformation during this time. Because Diocletian did put things into place that allowed Constantine to then continue the work that he had done. All right, now, one more very significant, I'm sure you have heard of the Council of Nicaea. Constantine is going to convene a meeting of the Council of Nicaea, 325 AD. Let's be clear, he was not a theologian, and he did not, he was not the primary theologian, he did not determine theology, but he convened the group, and he brought several leading church fathers and theologians together. What was at stake was the divinity of Christ. This is what we call the Arian controversy. Arian did not believe that Christ was divine. And Constantine wanted to get that taken care of once and for all. So they convened the Council of Nicaea, and the end result is what we know of as the Nicene Creed, and at the end of our class we're going to read the Nicene Creed together, because the Nicene Creed is, the Apostles' Creed is probably the most known, but I think the Nicene Creed is the most theological of some of the ancient creeds. So we're going to look at what the Council of Nicaea came up with. Now, the creed that we read actually came about 50 years later when they reworked the Nicene Creed from 325. So, but it's still pretty cool that we still read a creed that goes back to the 4th century AD. The other end result of the Council of Nicaea is Constantine is seen as the emperor who is guarding Christian theology and Christian. So he is a protector of Christian theology. It's going to really cement his popularity with Christians during this time. Another thing that he did, very significant, is he made Constantinople the capital. This is the ancient, I could only find like a modern day picture, so I thought this was a little better because it shows water on 3 sides. Militarily, it is a defensible place because you can defend with people on the shores and the ports. So it's a strategic location. This is old Byzantium, the city. Takes him 6 years to rebuild it, and he names it Constantinople. He did not think highly of himself. Today, what city is that? Istanbul. Does everybody know the They Might Be Giants song?
They might be one.
The band is called They Might Be Giants, but it's Istanbul, Constantinople. No, it's Istanbul. Okay, it's a great song. It's a great song. Okay, actually, it's not a great song, but it's catchy and it just gets in your head and you cannot get rid of it. And now I have put it in all of your heads. Sorry. So he makes Constantinople the capital. This is huge. Where has the capital been up till now? Rome. Rome is the known capital of the Roman Empire. But Constantine makes Constantinople the new capital. Now, there were good reasons and significant reasons for that, but I can't imagine it wasn't without pushback throughout the empire. Again, it's a strategic location. Right here is what we call the Bosphorus Sound. You can take a cruise ship through the Bosphorus Sound today, and you are spanning the passage, the water passageway between the European continent and the Asian continent. So it's a very strategic and defensible location. It links the Black Sea to the Mediterranean, so it's a great trade route. It's an important trade route. The eastern provinces, Rome, Britannia, those areas over to the west, they're going to be less prosperous. The eastern city and area is more prosperous. Rome is crumbling, and Rome is deteriorating a little bit. And so it also makes sense to move the capital to the more prosperous part of the Roman Empire. Also, in the west, they're being attacked by Germanic tribes. So we're moving away from the skirmishes, and he's moving the capital to Constantinople. It's also a political fresh start. Constantine can build his capital. He makes it intentionally Christian. He builds many churches. He saw this as the Christian capital for a Christian empire. And he filled it with churches, including the Church of the Holy Apostles, and dedicated the city to the, quote, God of the martyrs. So this is a significant step for Constantine, and probably an important one for him, because it shifts power to the east. Where did he live? In the east. So we can't say that he's not bright and a very logical thinker. It's going to become the capital of imperial power for 1,000 years. So it will be a significant and sustainable, for a long time, capital. All right. One of the things that Constantine did, he built churches. I'm only going to show you 3 that he built. This is the site of the old St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. It was actually torn down in the 1600s and rebuilt St. Peter's, which is still in Rome. But the old St. Peter's Basilica in Rome was built by him. This is the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem. And this is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. And I'm sure you know this, but what do these 3 churches all have in common? They are all built over significant Christian sites. Old St. Peter's Basilica is built over the place where Peter died and was buried. Church of the Nativity is built over the place where it's believed that Jesus was born. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre was built over the place where it was believed that Christ was crucified and died. So this is the inside, the chapel within the basilica of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And it's this chapel, this little chapel inside, which houses the place where Christ was crucified and died. This is the entrance. There's a gate across it in this picture, but it is open to the public. And you can go there and you will stand in line and you will fight with people from all, like everyone's doing this to try to get in, but you will go through those doors and you got to crouch down, no photos. You get about 2 seconds, but you walk in and you see the place where it's believed that Christ was crucified and died. This is inside the Church of the Nativity, and that is believed to be the place where Jesus was born. Now, what's interesting is it was found by Helena, and it was consecrated and built by Constantine. But there are the Coptic Church has its place where it believes Christ was born. And so it's not the only site in Bethlehem, but it is believed to be probably the closest to accurate of the places. And I don't know what the evidence or background is for that. I don't know how substantiated that is, but I'm willing to go with it because it felt like an incredibly special place when I was there. This is Helena, Constantine's mother, a very devout Christian. Now remember, I told you that there was an interesting story about her. This is actually a painting of Helena that was painted 1,300 years after she lived, and the artist believes this is what she might have looked like, and she is holding the true cross of Christ. It is believed that she went to Jerusalem, and I will tell you the story of that, and found the cross on which Christ was crucified. And I've mentioned that to a few people, and there are a lot of people that say, yes, she did. Yes, she did. Okay, so I'll tell you the story, and you can make your own determination about that. So what is her background? There's very little known about her upbringing and her young life. We know that she was raised in poverty. She was not a woman of means. She did not come from a family with means. But somewhere in her late teens, she caught the eye of a man named Constantius. And they were together for 19 years. Scholars are completely divided on whether they ever married. There is no evidence that they actually married. So were they just together for 19 years or were they married? Many people believe they weren't married because it seemed to have been a big deal that Constantine was the heir apparent, even though he was presumed illegitimate. So it's believed that they were together for 19 years, but not married. Why is that important? Because after 19 years, he dumped her, Helena. Constantius dumped Helena. Constantius was a military man, also not from great means. But because he was a military leader, one of the Roman emperors offered him his daughter's hand in marriage. Well, you've got this maybe great woman with no means, or you've got the emperor's daughter, which is going to elevate your status exponentially. He chooses to dump the woman he's been with 19 years, and he marries Theodora, who is the daughter of a Roman emperor. Crummy. That's just crummy. All right. So she is cast off. She goes to live in Rome. We believe she lived in Rome because there are inscriptions in Rome about Helena. So that's the extent of the evidence. But it's believed that primarily Constantine was raised by his father, Constantius. There's a lot more evidence of their close relationship and proximity than there is to his proximity to his mother. All of this is in the 4th century. Very hard to substantiate a lot of this. So I trust the scholars that have done more digging than I have into this. In 324, Constantine is he finally becomes the only emperor of the Roman Empire. He finally defeats Licinius. Remember, that's the emperor who issues the Edict of Milan with him. He defeats him in battle and has him executed. So finally, he's it. There's nobody else in contention. Constantine is the guy. His mother, again a devout Christian, because he is now the Roman emperor, says, I want to take a pilgrimage and I want to go to Jerusalem. She wanted to walk in the footsteps of her Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. There is no question, there's no doubt about Helena's devotion. Eusebius, the historian, devotes pages to Helena's faith in his history of Constantine. So, and it's a little unclear about who influences whom. Is it Constantine that influences mother? But either way, they're both pretty devoted Christians. So she goes to the Holy Land and she does several things. One thing she does that I don't think is talked about a whole lot is she publicly and visibly gives alms to the poor. When she sees beggars in Jerusalem, she gives them money. She provides for them. She also gives bonuses to the military. She issues endowments to churches in Jerusalem, so she gives money to churches. And she gives freedom to captives prisoners who she believes have been unjustly imprisoned. It's a very visible trip. And again, it elevates Christianity in the eyes of many of the people in Jerusalem because she's helping those that are underserved and often ignored. The other thing that she does, which is far more well known, is she traces relics. She wants to find things that were either part of a martyr or somebody that was close to Christ, or things that they touched or things that they owned. So she goes and looks specifically for relics. So again, relics have been around for a really long time. Relics are, again, parts of significant people. They might be body or bones of saints, or they might be physical items that they touched or owned. So it could be a cloak. The shroud that was believed to be over Jesus' face in his Via Dolorosa, that is certainly a relic and very revered. The cross of Christ is a relic. But so would the staff of David. If you find a staff that's believed to have belonged to the shepherd David, that would be considered a relic. She goes searching for relics, for things that belonged to these earliest Christ followers. And her biggest goal is to find the true cross of Christ. She is almost always depicted holding the true cross of Christ, because that was her biggest accomplishment. So here's how the traditional story goes. She went to Jerusalem and she said, "Where will I find the cross of Christ?" And everyone says, "I don't know." And that goes on for a while. Nobody seems to know. It's been 3 centuries, right? They don't know. But one day she asks a Jewish person, and the Jewish person says, "Oh, I think it's under the Temple of Venus." So she goes to the Temple of Venus and she has the whole temple destroyed. And she begins an excavation. And she digs underneath the Temple of Venus. And she finds, again, this is tradition, she finds 3 crosses. Is that significant? How many crosses were there when Jesus?
3.
There you go, 3 crosses. Well, she has the Bishop of Jerusalem with her, and the Bishop of Jerusalem says, "But we have to know which one was the one on which Christ was crucified. How are we going to do that?" There's a funeral procession that is going through the streets of Jerusalem at the same time, and the Bishop of Jerusalem calls them over and says, "Bring that dead body over here." I'm not kidding. This is the tradition. And so they bring the deceased person over, and the Bishop of Jerusalem lays that deceased body on each of the 3 crosses. And when he lands on the one that is the true cross of Christ, he is raised from the dead. And they know this is the cross of Christ. And it was quite a stir in that time. And throughout centuries, she is still depicted as carrying the true cross of Christ. Again, I've run that by several people. Some were Catholic, some are not. And many of them said, "Oh yeah, oh, Helena found." I mean, it really is believed by some number of people. I feel like I would need a little bit more, I don't know, carbon dating, something. But they take one of these crosses and they found 3 crosses. They take one of them because it was buried with the true cross of Christ, and they make little crosses out of it. And Christians flocked to get one of those and to wear it, because then they were wearing Christ around their neck. Christ was right there. So relics were a big deal. To some, relics might still be a big deal. When I was in Israel in 2023, I'm shocked that I found a picture that is not teeming with people. This, I want to get this right, this is called the Stone of Anointing, and it is believed to be, it marks the place where Jesus' body was prepared for burial. And when I was there, I was up on a staircase. You can see the staircase up there in the upper right. I was up there, and I'm not kidding when I say it was teeming with people desperate to touch this stone, because they believe, if I can just touch this stone that marks the place where my Savior's body was prepared for his crucifixion and his burial, then I will experience Christ in that moment. I mean, it is a deeply significant thing. And still today, dozens and dozens of people were in line to touch this stone of anointing. When we get to some time for discussion question, we're gonna talk about that. Because I don't think it's, like I have a first blush answer, and then I think about it a little more, and my answer might change a little bit. So we're gonna have some discussion about that. So what did Constantine do for Christianity? We can see the obvious answer, right? He made Christianity visible, legal, and preferred. He elevated Christianity without a doubt. And he caused the Christian church to flourish. Again, we have a crisis with all of these people flooding the church without being discipled, but the church is flourishing. Think about where people were worshiping before the Edict of Milan. They were in house churches, right? They were in the catacombs. Some of them were worshiping in graveyards at the graves of martyrs. Why would they do that? It's a relic. If you can be at the grave of a martyr, you are that much closer to Christ in that moment. But this is where the church has been worshiping. It's hidden, it's secret, it's simple. But now the emperor is coming. He's building churches and he's showing up. Can you have a simple underground in the catacomb service when the emperor of the Roman Empire walks in? No, you cannot.
It's like a band that's underground.
Right? And then all of a sudden, yeah. So the dress of pastors changes. The involvement of the congregation becomes less. It becomes far more priest-centered and priest-oriented. Choirs are started. So our choir and our praise team can thank Constantine, because this was when that started. My mother-in-law is Anglican. She calls herself High Roman, or Low Roman, High Anglican, which means she loves her smells and bells. I don't know if you've been raised with that, but for her, if Christmas Eve does not have the priest swinging the incense, it is not ushering in Christmas. That tradition is so important to her, and it's so significant, and it ushers in Christmas. Easter Vigil is the same. She's got to have her smells and bells. Incense begins during this time because burning incense was a sign of honor and respect for the emperor. Why do we have incense in churches? This is why. Because they showed honor and respect to the emperor. So these are some of the things that are going to happen. The processional started. People started processing in because the emperor was there. Leaders, government leaders were there. So the processional started. So many of the practices of our liturgy today started during Constantine's rule. This was fascinating to me. I didn't know most of this. But there were a lot of other things that Constantine did, and this is a very long list, so bear with me. He called Sunday a rest day. Now, Sunday was already the Sabbath, but remember, you have tens of thousands of new converts. Do they know about the Sabbath? Do they know that you're supposed to not work on the Sabbath? He declares it, he just calls it a rest day. Sunday is a rest day. So he legislated that Sunday, what he calls the Venerable Day of the Sun, should be a day of rest, closing workshops and stores so people could attend worship. We've already talked about returning church property. Wait for this. Did you know that still today, clergy, we pay self-employment taxes. We are not taxed in the same way that people that work for a company are taxed. It's different. Started with Constantine. He exempted Christian clergy from taxation, military duty, municipal, or civic services. So it's not the same practice as it was under Constantine, but he was the one that wanted to give benefits to those that are serving Christ. He legitimized bequests and inheritance to the church. He encouraged people, when they died, to leave their wealth and their goods to the church, to promote the Christian church. We already know that he built and funded churches. Christian symbols became visible on iconography and coins. You're going to find coins with a cross or with the Chi-Rho. And Helena's head. We know Helena existed because there's a coin with her head on it. He offered state funding for the poor, so the church officially began helping those with no means. He granted privileges and wealth and land to the church. You can see how some of what he instituted is going to lead to the abuses that are going to lead to the Reformation. in a little over 1,000 years, right? And again, he restored Christians who were wrongly convicted or persecuted. He placed Christian education and scripture as priorities for parents when raising their children and for those that were Christians. And he officially protected Christian cemeteries and martyrs' tombs. Why would that be important? Why would someone go dig up a tomb of a martyr? Exactly, for relics. I want the rib of whoever, Eusebius or whoever, or Jesus, whoever it is. So he made it illegal to dig up the grave. So he protected the graves of the martyrs. And he legalized Christian assembly. All of a sudden it is legal to gather in a church and to worship God together. He offered a lot to Christianity. I wonder if he knew from the outset just how revolutionary a lot of what Constantine offered would be and how long-lasting what he did was. Any comments? I have a couple of discussion questions for us, but any comments about this verbose bunch of
There's
information?
another guy that comes in a couple emperors later, it's maybe the apostate.
Yeah?
He rolls it all back
Yeah?
until then another guy comes.
Until another guy comes and re-legalizes it. So Constantine is the first one. Absolutely. I think it's Justinian that makes it the... I'd have to look that up, though. I'm not sure I'm right about that. Yeah, you're exactly right. So it's not smooth sailing after Constantine, but he is the first that is going to put all of this into place.
Is there any certainty on the crosses they found?
I don't know how you can say it is. I mean, I just, can you carbon date back to the 4th century? I don't think, can you? Okay. I could not find any credible evidence that said. It has just been, kind of.
If a dead person came to life, that would be.
If that actually, again, it's a story.
Yeah. But
Did it actually happen? Interestingly, Eusebius is the great historian that spent the most time talking about Constantine and Helena, and he makes zero mention of Helena finding the true cross of Christ. And he would have been a lot closer to her time period, of course, than we are. So for me, that makes it a little suspicious. Am I willing to say she didn't? No. Who knows?
As soon as you started telling the story, I was suspicious.
Yeah, right, right. And you're kind of mentally going, oh, yeah,
I've
exactly.
always heard that his call for the Council of Nicaea, though, was really not theological at all. In other words, he had trouble within the kingdom, within the empire, of the warring factions and so on. And in one sense, calling the council, however it turned out, he was after peace.
And unity, yes.
And unity. So he got them together so that they would hash this out.
Yes, right,
I don't know, he did not have the spiritual discernment to go one way or the other.
right.
So in that sense, that part was sort of self-serving.
Sure,
Yeah, I mean, he's
Sure.
trying to keep order.
right. That's a bless his heart moment, right?
Yeah.
All right, so I have a couple of questions. Let's talk about relics for a minute. Why do you think physical places and objects became so important to early Christians? And do they and should they still play a role in faith today? So why was it important then? And do you think it is or should be important today?
Well, it seems to me that we're making an assumption that they were important to truly repentant and regenerate people.
It's a good point.
I don't know whether or not they all were, because in one sense, there's a level of superstition connected to it that is not biblical. So, I would question even, it's the issue that you raised a while ago about this flood of individuals coming in to the church. That creates issues if you're not truly regenerate.
Right.
Some of those people just want to be close to the emperor.
Well, they're people who do not understand. They don't understand that you don't come to Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, a reformed understanding is God finds you and calls you to himself. This almost sounds like, ooh, there'd be an advantage to doing this.
Exactly,
So
yeah.
I'm going to come, but I don't really have any understanding about what it is I'm coming to.
Right, no theological foundation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and in that sense, it dilutes the church and it muddies the water to a degree that you have all kinds of problems. I inherited a church in Roanoke where I had a ton of people that were in the church and were officers and frankly were not regenerate. And it had to do with a previous pastor who engaged in membership drives. But for many of those people, it was like joining Rotary.
Right.
I mean, and in that sense, if you're not a genuine Christian, you're a problem for me.
So back to the relics.
Yes.
It's, you know, it's reported on some superstition. But I was thinking, if going on a pilgrimage or seeing some legitimate relic brings that person, they feel like that brings them closer to Christ.
Yeah, I mean, is that wrong?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I don't know.
So let me follow that up, because this is why I said, you know, I had an initial thought, and then my initial thought was right with Robert. My second thought was, but when we went to Israel, I was so excited. I mean, the whole reason I wanted to go was to stand in the place where Christ had been, to be on the Sea of Galilee, where he had preached, where he had, you know, baptized, where he had cooked fish for his disciples in a resurrection appearance. I mean, that was special. But here's the question. Was it the beach and the boat that were special? Or was it the experience of knowing that Christ is? I mean, I do think that's a significant difference. I'm not saying that the wooden boat that I was on, that was on the Sea of Galilee, had any special significance. If I touched the Jesus boat in the museum, I don't think that had any more significance. I don't think it was an object that had that significance, but it was special, and it was a very deeply moving time and trip for that reason. But I think we have to be careful about what it is we're worshiping. I think that's the key. Okay. Any other comments?
And if it has historical relevance, I mean, it just helps put it in context. Have we found the ark yet?
Maybe,
Oh.
they're thinking maybe. Yeah.
I mean, if you actually found the bones of John or something, that'd be, yeah, okay, to me, it ties it together. Is it something you're worshiping? No, but it's...
But it's a special, yeah, it's significant.
So
All right.
when you hear the story, for example, of the storm that came up on the Sea of Galilee, rather suddenly, Jesus is asleep in the boat. I mean, I can see where if you go there and then you start talking to people who talk about the weird weather patterns sometimes on the sea, it makes the story real.
Yes.
More. You realize that in one sense, then this is not a fabricated story. In that sense, it enriches the word to you. But yeah, I mean, when we were in Geneva in 23, went to Calvin's church, wonderful. I mean, I didn't salivate over the pulpit or anything, but it was nice.
But it was
to
special.
see. Yeah, this is nice to kind of see where he was, what it was like to preach in that kind of a space, and so on. But then you go into other Catholic cathedrals and you are appalled at the iconography and so on, and you just go, this is, I don't like this at all. But there again, that communicates to you that in the Reformation, when reformers took over those churches and they stripped all of that away, I understand their motivation. I get
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. When he built Constantinople and he built all of the churches, the Hagia Sophia was first a Christian church. I mean, that's one of the biggest and the greatest Islamic mosques today.
Justinian built that.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And I was there in 2023, and it's interesting. They have not gotten rid of the crosses. They have not gotten rid of any on the ceiling. They've just taken a white cloth and they've, like it's a dome. So it like billows like this. So you just go to the side. You're like, look, there's the cross. There's the Christian symbol. It's not hidden. It's amazing to me. It's just, for me, it's another reminder that you cannot kill what God is building.
Because the Turks not here. The Arabs were controlling it.
Well, the other
That's a
part-
different conversation.
Well,
So,
the other part is what Jesus said to Pilate, my kingdom is not of this world.
of this world, absolutely.
And that one,
Yeah.
you can mount all the armies you want, you're never going to overcome